The Your Mark on the World show is made possible by our sponsors, including Clean Energy Advisors.
Welcome to Your Mark on the World, bringing you another changemaker with champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and we have with us again today Erik Melang, the CEO and founder of Distributive Solar. Erik, welcome back.
Thanks, Devin. Glad to be here.
We're excited to talk to you. You know, we are in the middle of a solar energy revolution, and I think there are a lot of people who don't understand how much things have changed even in the last couple of years, and why now it makes so much sense to be doing solar. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, things have changed quite a bit in terms of pricing, but what's interesting is that solar panel technology has been around for a long, long time, and it's very well known. But what we've seen over the last few years, as scale has really come in, as China has really taken over the leadership in manufacturing and created that scale, they have driven prices down on the equipment very rapidly, which is making it solar more economical for commercial business owners right now. So now is a perfect time for companies to consider solar on their rooftops.
So what are the things that are going on? We've got the tax credits that are still 30%, but that changes. Does that phase out beginning next year?
It's going to start to step down in 2020. So we have 3 years to go, but that 3 years is not a very long time, because, you know, when you're starting talking about the solar discussion with the building owner, that could take 6 months to a year. You know, the queue is lining up for projects to get done in 2019. And so potentially a company could have difficulty if they wait too long to make that decision to capture that great investor tax credit. But in addition to that, Devin, we also have the bonus depreciation, the MACRs, and that's going to also begin to step down beginning in 2018. And so
that's another tax code provision that will make solar, well, any investment, including a solar investment, more expensive.
Absolutely. So we just have this unique window of opportunity here where we have this overcapacity in solar equipment and coupled with this investor tax credit that's still here and this bonus depreciation. And it's kind of like in the early 90s in the internet. We are just getting ready to see this thing mushroom. All the conditions are in place. Companies are educating themselves. They're seeing leadership from some of the large Fortune 500 companies who are pursuing renewable energy goals, and that's trickling down into the smaller businesses. And I would contend that the small, medium-sized businesses who typically have the higher electricity rates versus their larger counterparts are the biggest beneficiaries in really reducing their energy costs.
So typically what you're doing is you're creating projects that reduce the amount of electricity companies buy from their provider, whoever that may be, typically a utility, rather than creating projects that are so large that they're selling power back onto the grid. Is that right?
That's right, and that's called behind the meter. And when you look at most commercial rooftops, they're not large enough to cover the entire load anyway. So typically commercial building, if you're between 30 and 70% offset with the solar, that's a good place to be right there. That leaves you some room so you don't overproduce. A lot of times if you produce too much energy, you can be penalized by the utility. But when you stay behind that meter and you're just offsetting your own load, then it's less hassles to deal with the utility, and you have a known. You're just offsetting kilowatt hours and by producing kilowatt hours. So the math is really easy on the behind the meter. Yes.
Yeah. So the advantage is, of course, if you're spending 10, 15 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity, you're producing that, you save that at 100% of what you would have spent to the utility when you have the solar, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we need to let everybody know. Those are phenomenal returns. When we look at the returns on solar versus other type of investments, it's startling of what kind of returns you can earn.
So let's say that someone, on average, are you about $2 per installed kilowatt? Is that kind of where we are?
Right now, I think that if we go back to 2011, we're down 60% on the installation cost since then. So
wow.
We were looking at commercial installation at 5. Now we're under 2 in that short 6-year period. And we're well under 2, depending on the project size.
Wow.
And we've seen projects come in that are between 100 and 200 kilowatts in the 170 area. And that's phenomenal. And that's really driving the payback period down. And
Sure. Now, before tax benefits, if you have someone who's got a 100 kilowatt project, obviously it's not going to produce 100 kilowatts of energy 24 hours a day. The sun doesn't shine that way. Some days are rainy. How much power can you expect to generate and use typically on a 100 watt system?
On a 100 kilowatt system, I think that's a good size for somebody has, say, 7,000. No, I would say lower than that. If their energy bills are somewhere around 15,000 a year, that's a good size system there. But what's really important is looking at the utility rates. I spend a lot of time looking at utility rate schedules, and they're different for every utility, and it's very difficult. And utilities have these legacy billing systems that are not up to the 21st century. I've talked to some utilities in the Southeast here recently. They don't have smart meters yet, and they can't even provide their customers with the data to see what their usage is over the course of the day. And so there's a lot of changes there, but the utilities really need to invest and to provide this data that business owners are really paying for, so they can see exactly what they're paying and what they're using.
But if someone offsets 50% of their energy use on a $15,000 bill, they're saving $7,500 a year on an investment of about $170,000, right?
That's right, roughly.
Now that sounds modest, but you also get the 30% tax credit when you build it, so that takes your cost. Is the 30% included in the $1.70, or is it?
It's not.
That?
So when you look at the after-tax return, and that's typically when you're seeing the payback period calculated, it's taking into account the tax benefits all that you can use in the very first year in the paybacks. But I think that payback number is very, very important. And we're seeing paybacks in the 5, 6, 7 years for commercial enterprises. And a CFO might say, wow, 5 or 6 years is a long time. But this is a 30-plus year piece of equipment that is very durable, and it's going to last a long time. So, I think a lot of people get a good understanding when they look at the levelized cost of energy, when they look at their utility, and they look at what solar can do. And when you're prepaying for your electricity up front and getting this 6-year payback, but then you have 25 years of these mitigated energy cost increases, those returns get bigger and bigger and bigger every year of avoiding those electricity cost hikes. And so the levelized cost of energy for a solar project is about 2 or 3 cents is what you're paying for kilowatt hour when you look at it over a 30-year period.
Yeah, so that it's a tremendous savings, right out of the chute. And of course, this is an incredible environmental benefit as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the environmental benefits are starting to be seen. That this big move towards renewable energy globally and this energy efficiency that we're seeing, as we're starting to see some of the emissions kind of cap out a little bit in some of these economies, certainly in the United States, but we have a long ways to go there. But the solar is really a triple impact. I mean, it's good for the environment. It's good for jobs. It's good financially for businesses. It's just a win across the board. And I think that we're seeing this consciousness finally. People are starting to get their head around it, that solar is just a technology. And that, these commercial businesses have these open rooftops. They're just sitting there open that they can employ and produce revenues off of their rooftop. And I was looking at a fast food chain recently, and I was looking at the numbers, and for every dollar savings they had in energy was equivalent to $12 in revenue. That's two people coming into your store for every dollar of energy savings. So when we look at the average profit margins across, the entire gamma here, you're looking at about 10%. So if you extrapolate that, you can see that, in the sluggish economy we have right now, like producing revenues on your rooftop is really great for your bottom line.
Yeah, huge impacts there that are essentially guaranteed, right? The sun's going to come out every day for the next 30 years and generate electricity on your rooftop, and there is almost no risk in that. Whereas it's hard to predict other revenues, to grow revenues, very, very difficult to predict. So the rate of return you require on something that has a nearly guaranteed return should be smaller, should be lower than the rate of return you'd expect on something that's risky, right?
Absolutely. And when you look at returns in general, and you look at like the S&P 500 and the Dow, and they've done pretty well lately, but what people earn versus what the market is doing is two different things. But right now we're seeing the markets at all-time highs based on a lot of expectations that might not happen. So it's kind of risky committing a lot of capital right there. A lot of people need to invest in fixed income for their portfolios. The returns are very, very low. Interest rates are very, very low. So when you look at different places that you can invest your capital as a business owner, employing a rooftop with solar and seeing double-digit returns, it should be at the top of the list of a consideration there as far as investing goes.
What can you give us a specific example from one of your client situations, perhaps where we can talk through, how the decision was made, how the project has progressed, and how they're benefiting from it?
Absolutely. And, we started Distributive Solar in the fall of 2016, and we're early in the process, and, we're building a pipeline, and we have projects that are at that close stage, and we've seen projects being closed. But one in particular that I'm working on right now is interesting in terms of what happens during this whole process, introducing solar to the client, and then that client have to bring their different stakeholders into play. And so it really takes a while to educate all those people. But once they see the numbers and they get a good feel for it, then they're comfortable for us bringing them in 5 quotes on that project. And so when we see these quotes come in, we're starting to see some consistency, that a lot of them are going to be the same design, which brings confidence to that building owner that these construction companies are looking at that rooftop and coming to the same conclusion on the system size and the production numbers.
So you've got a great process. So let's talk through your process. So you come in, you meet with somebody, you get them interested. What's the first step? How do you evaluate the project?
Okay, we have 2 different kind of stakeholders. One is the commercial building owner. So we just simply want to show them the opportunity and what solar looks like on their building aesthetically and financially. So the first process is for us to take a look at their rooftop through Google Earth, make sure it doesn't have a lot of obstructions, little shading, that it's not too old, and that the rooftop looks good. Then we look at the utility bills, and we want to see what their rates are, because that's really what we're competing against, what the rate is of the utility. So once we gather that data, we provide a working model to the business owner and show them the payback period, the return on investment, the 3D imaging of what solar looks like. And when they go through that process, I think a lot of times they're just shocked at how good of a return that it is and how much lower prices are than they thought. And so that's where we go back to the customer and say, let's sign a letter of intent, get them to sign a letter of engagement that's non-binding so that we can share this data with our construction partners and bring them actual quotes. And then when the actual quotes come in, we sit down with the business owner and go through those and help them determine which one is the best for their building, short-term and long-term. So that's the process with the building owner. But we also have originators that we recruit across the country, people who might be sustainability consultants, LED reps, independent sales reps who have relationships with building owners. And we equip them with the tools so that they can present solar to these relationships. And so that's the second part of our business model. We have direct origination with building owners, and we also are recruiting independent sales agents so that they can go to their customers, and we support them in that process.
It sounds like this is a really simple process for building owners, that it isn't overly complex, it's not overly time consuming, and they can quickly make the analysis, make the decisions, and get into the queue for getting the actual solar panels on the roof.
Absolutely. I think what's important and what we do differently is that we're not trying to sell solar necessary to this business owner. We're trying to be their solar agent so that we can help them look into solar and see if it works for them. We're agnostic in terms of what equipment or what installation company they want to use. We just want to show them the opportunity and assist them in going through that process.
So are there some people you talk to that it just doesn't work?
I'm sorry?
There's some people that you talk to, business owners, where you ultimately conclude solar is not a good fit?
Absolutely. I mean, we look at the building, we look at, we interview the building owner, and we get a sense of what their financials look like, if they're going to need to borrow money or not. If they need to borrow money or they need to go with the power purchase agreement type model, you have to have a lot higher rates, to meet those hurdles. So we're looking at the rooftop, we're looking at the utility bills, and we're determining if it makes sense really up front. We can determine that very, very quickly if it even makes sense for them to pursue. If the payback period is, 10, 11 years, it just doesn't work. Or if the electricity rates in that particular area are very, very low, which is a lot of cases in the Southeast, we're dealing with very low rates. And when you're doing that PPA model just doesn't work as easily. You have to thread that needle. So that's why behind the meter cash, going to your local bank to finance these deals is so important.
Of course, we are looking at really low interest rates at this point. It's a really borrower-friendly environment with a strong economy and low interest rates to be borrowing for solar projects, right?
Absolutely, and the rates are very attractive. We've seen a couple banks here in the Southeast, like BB&T, for instance. They have a solar program, and they'll do commercial loans out to 10 years at 5%. And when you bring that type of financing in, you can spread it over that 10-year period, then you're cash flow positive almost in the very, very beginning. And with that leverage that you use, the internal rate of return just shoots straight up because, again, we know the production that the sun's going to provide on those panels. That is a known, and that's the beautiful part about it.
Yeah, so you could, you're cash flow positive from day one, and after 10 years, you've got a free electricity source right on your rooftop, and it's all paid for. So,
absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. That asset's going to sit there and produce for you for decade after decade. And, these solar panels are very durable. And even though the warranties are 25 years, which is fantastic, they last a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So it's
They
really
don't have a lot of moving parts, do they?
no moving parts. It's modular. So a lot of people want to talk about storage and can they add that? And absolutely, they can add storage. So my contention is let's get the solar now. Let's take advantage of these tax credits now, because there might be a storage incentive 3 or 4 years down the road that you want to make sure you're ready for then. And so I think taking care of the solar now, positioning yourself for that next wave, which is storage down the road. Yeah.
Now, the storage component makes this whole equation even more exciting because it makes it easier to keep your solar energy behind the meter, even if you're producing enough for all of your needs, right?
That's right. And I think what a lot of business owners are going to know, can they island off their facility from the grid? And you can't do that with solar because you need the grid for the backup. But once the storage solution comes in, then you can protect your facilities and your business from brownouts or blackouts or worse. And so I think that's going to be important for companies to know that they can isolate themselves and still run their business, even if the grid does go down. And yeah.
Energy storage solutions, batteries are getting better, cheaper, faster.
All the time.
So,
and everything, and this technology across the board, whether what industry it is, it's just accelerating at a faster pace. And solar is kind of a simple technology, but with this technology, with the cloud and artificial intelligence and all these advancements that we're making, it's just making the technology advancement even quicker and faster and coming from different directions at the same time. And it's really going to turn kilowatts and watts into data, and then when they're turned into data, then they become tradable. And we're seeing that with storage right now in some markets like Australia, that they have placed batteries in 50,000 households, and then aggregate, they can use all that battery power together to become basically a seller of energy for their customers. So batteries are going to be a way to produce revenues on site for your business by selling excess energy to others who need it.
Yeah. Well, these are exciting times, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Before we wrap up, Erik, can you just take a minute and tell people how they can learn more about Distributive Solar and connect with you personally?
Absolutely. Our website is www.distributivesolar.com. And on Twitter, they can find us at DISTR Solar. And we're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. You can send us an email at info@distributivesolar.com. But whether you are independent sales rep who's looking to get into the industry, we can provide you the tools so that you can present solar to your relationships, or you're a building owner that would like to know what solar can do for your business, but you don't want to go out there and have installers cold calling you, then let us help you with that process and be that buffer and show you what the opportunity is like without you having to invest a lot of time and your own resources to find that out.
Well, fantastic. Well, Erik, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and we wish you every success in scaling up solar around the country. And again, we want to express our appreciation to you and your affiliate at Clean Energy Advisors for sponsoring our show. We're grateful for your support here, and
Thank you,
wish you every success.
Thank you.
All righty, let's do some good.
Clean Energy Advisors creates investment opportunities in the renewable energy sector that provide clients with predictable income, preservation of capital, and positive impact. Clean Energy Advisors is committed to providing clients with investment opportunities with both market rates of return and measurable impact.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was recorded via Google Hangouts on Air and is available at youtube.com/Devin Thorpe. Subscribe to this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes by searching for Your Mark on the World. Every weekday, Devin hosts a CEO, celebrity, entrepreneur, or other changemaker here on the Your Mark on the World show to inspire and prepare you to make your mark. Devin is a champion of social good, writing about, advocating for, and advising people who are doing good. He is a Forbes contributor who is a recognized thought leader in social entrepreneurship, impact investing, and crowdfunding. To book Devin as a speaker, visit devinthorpe.com. Learn more about Devin's work at yourmarkontheworld.com.